is here in the state of Virginia, here in our Northern Virginia resident agency with our partners.
Cases which, if successful, will eliminate an entire criminal outfit.
How do you erase a decade of fear from one street? Kensington, Philadelphia's most notorious battleground answered that question under a shroud of fog. The night smelled of damp concrete and a rain-soaked heroin. Sirens stayed silent, then without warning, the 3100 block of Weymouth Street lit up in bursts of green on an FBI command screen. Invisible veins of fentanyl, cocaine, and crack had pumped poison through this corridor for years. Now they were about to be cauterized. From an unmarked van, agents moved in 12 seconds apart, synchronized by encrypted radio. Each doorway told a story: addicts slumped on stairwells, money counters humming in basements, rifles under floorboards. Federal task forces called it Operation Breakpoint, their mission decapitate the Montanez cartel that had turned an American neighborhood into an open-air narcotics empire. The investigation had begun in 2016, buried under years of surveillance logs, intercepted messages, and hidden cameras. But by 2025, under President Donald Trump's expanded urban integrity directive, the mandate was clear: no quarter for the architects of decay. Intelligence from the DEA, ICE, and FBI converged in one digital command cell. The order came at 22:48, execute all warrants, simultaneously. 9 tactical teams swept the rowhouses. Metal doors buckled under hydraulic rams. Federal agents' search warrant echoed through the labyrinth of narrow streets. Jose Antonio Morales Nieves, known as Flaco, was caught mid-call, his ledger open, his empire collapsing in real time. Down the block, Viejo Montanez, the operations enforcer, reached for a weapon that never left its holster. Nancy Rios Valentin, the cartel's financial brain, sealed the safe seconds before agents broke in. From Puerto Rico to New Jersey, Delaware to North Philadelphia, the synchronized raids unfolded like clockwork. 24 suspects arrested, 8 already in custody transferred to federal holding. One fugitive, still unnamed, vanished into the night. But his network didn't vanish with him. Evidence teams seized encrypted phones, shift ledgers, stacks of marked cash, and boxes of ammunition. Each piece fit into a larger mosaic one, showing how organized crime had evolved beyond alleys and street corners into cloud storage, cryptocurrency wallets, and dark web logistics. Federal officials hailed the strike as more than a bust. It was a signal, a recalibration of federal power on American soil. The FBI's joint operations now mirrored counterterrorism frameworks once used overseas. This isn't just about drugs, one agent said under anonymity. It's about restoring sovereignty to neighborhoods that were written off. The question now hangs heavy over the cracked sidewalks of Kensington. Can the same machinery that hunts terrorists abroad rebuild trust at home? Before the first door shattered, the FBI already knew its targets by name, voice, and heartbeat. Inside, the Morales-Montanez network hierarchy ruled like a military chain of command. Jose Antonio Flaco Morales was the strategist, a quiet man whose strength lay not in muscle, but in mathematics. He ran Kensington's market like a multinational corporation, rotating shifts, assigning corners, and distributing narcotics with logistical precision. His lieutenants referred to him as El Contador, the accountant, because every gram was tracked as if it were gold. Below him, Ramon Viejo Montanez enforced the order. His nickname Old Man belied his ruthlessness. Surveillance footage from 2023 showed him mediating disputes with a pistol on the table, flanked by bodyguards who spoke little and shot fast. His reputation alone kept rivals from encroaching on Kensington's turf. For years, witnesses described him as a ghost, always near, never seen long enough for a warrant to stick. Then came Nancy Rios Valentin, the invisible hand. On paper, she ran a laundromat. In reality, she laundered tens of thousands of dollars weekly through shell accounts stretching from Delaware to San Juan. The trio formed a perfect triangle: operations, enforcement, and finance. Together, they built a drug economy so intricate it rivaled legitimate commerce, generating an estimated $12 million annually. Investigators from Reuters and DW reported that Morales' organization functioned with levels of discipline usually seen in paramilitary units. Encrypted apps replaced radios. Drop houses changed nightly. Couriers used rideshare cars with fake GPS trails. The network even employed former cyber criminals to monitor digital surveillance chatter, alerting the bosses when law enforcement got too close. But nothing lasts forever. By late 2024, federal task forces had infiltrated the communication chain. A cracked encryption key from a seized phone in Delaware opened the gates to 1,000 conversations, orders, payment codes, even threat logs. The FBI's digital forensics unit reconstructed the syndicate's structure line by line, revealing where product moved, who got paid, and who disappeared when rules were broken. The Guardian later described Kensington as a neighborhood ruled by fear, but sustained by dependence. Flacco's dealers handed out free samples to keep clients hooked, then used violence to maintain monopoly. Police reports from the time show patterns identical to insurgent control zones, intimidation curfews, and extortion disguised as protection. Yet the deeper story wasn't only about drugs, it was about power. Under President Trump's administration, Washington had declared America's inner cities national security priority zones. The Morales network became the test case for a new doctrine treat domestic criminal enterprises with the same counterintelligence rigor once reserved for foreign threats. By connecting drug routes from San Juan to Philadelphia, investigators exposed what Al Jazeera called the transnational shadow market, a web linking U.S. cities to offshore cartels using American streets as final distribution fronts. Defense analysts at Janes noted the operation's military-style intelligence integration, calling it the convergence of homeland policing and national defense. What emerged from the chaos was a question with no easy answer. When the state fights crime with wartime tools, how far can it go before liberty bends under its own shield? It began like thunder rolling through the veins of the city. At 22:48 hours, the order went live. The digital clock on the FBI command screen pulsed red, execute warrants. All zones. Within seconds, the map of the Mid-Atlantic exploded in synchronized motion: Philadelphia, Puerto Rico, Delaware, New Jersey. Agents in tactical black descended like a wave. The sound of hydraulic rams echoed off narrow brick walls. Neighbors awoke to blinding flashes and the metallic rattle of handcuffs. Helicopters circled low, their spotlights slicing through mist. Inside the command center, screens flickered with body cam footage. Every move, every arrest, every heartbeat transmitted to the nerve core of Operation Breakpoint. Jose Flaco Morales was the first to fall. He was found in a cluttered room above a bodega, surrounded by ledgers, prepaid phones, and a half-written note, possibly an escape plan. Across town, Viejo Montanez fought to the end. He fired once missed and was pinned beneath 2 agents within 10 seconds. Rios Valentin didn't resist. She simply whispered, "It's over," as agents opened the safe she had just locked. Reuters described the raid as a textbook operation in precision policing. No shots fired beyond that single miss. No officers injured. 24 arrests made in one night. Even hardened detectives called it unprecedented. The evidence haul filled 3 trucks, over 30 firearms, $1.2 million in cash, 10 kilos of fentanyl, heroin, and cocaine, enough to kill half the city's population if distributed raw. But what stunned investigators wasn't the drugs, it was the data. Laptop servers, encrypted drives, all containing years of records that mapped out the internal machinery of a domestic cartel. BBC correspondents embedded with the DEA task force later revealed how the operation had been modeled after anti-terror strikes abroad. Broad intelligence-led, technology-driven, legally airtight. Each warrant was a puzzle piece in a larger plan designed to prevent appeals or mistrials. The DOJ called it evidence warfare, winning not with bullets, but with documentation so complete it could bury entire organizations. On the ground, officers spoke of surreal quiet after the chaos. The rain returned. Streetlights flickered. The stench of damp narcotics clung to the air. For the first time in years, no lookouts watched the corners. No coded whistles broke the night. At the federal courthouse, agents rolled in cages of evidence. The walls, still lined with the national flag, glowed beneath harsh fluorescent lights. Inside, prosecutors read the names, each syllable representing years of human misery, overdoses, lost sons and daughters. For families who had buried loved ones, this was justice in motion. But beyond the headlines, the operation raised questions. Was this the birth of a new era in American law enforcement, one where the line between counterterrorism and policing blurs completely? Analysts at DW and Defense News warned that if such tactics became standard, oversight must evolve equally fast. Otherwise, the tools meant to dismantle crime could one day shadow ordinary citizens. Yet as dawn broke, one truth lingered over Philadelphia's skyline: the empire that ruled Kensington for a decade had fallen in a single night. And with it, the city took its first breath of freedom in years. But what price would that breath demand tomorrow? By sunrise, the chaos had settled into order. The block that once pulsed with dealers and addicts now stood eerily clean yellow tape fluttering where bodies once leaned. Inside the federal building, cameras clicked as FBI Director Kash Patel stepped before the press. His voice cut through the room like steel. This isn't a raid, it's a reclamation. Behind him, U.S. Attorney David Metcalf stacked thick folders onto the podium. The indictment, nearly 400 pages, was described by Reuters as the largest federal narcotics case ever filed in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. Each page chronicled years of wiretaps, undercover buys, and financial forensics. It wasn't just about arrests, it was about erasure, a full dismantling of the Montanez cartel's infrastructure. Patel outlined the stakes. The operation was a template for how the federal government under President Donald Trump's Urban Integrity Directive would reclaim American streets from entrenched criminal systems. "We are not chasing individuals," Patel said. "We are dismantling enterprises that function like terrorist cells." His tone left no room for ambiguity. Across the nation, the news rippled through morning broadcasts. BBC News led with America's new war on urban syndicates. Analysts drew parallels to the post-9/11 shift in national security doctrine, this time turned inward. The Department of Justice confirmed that data from Operation Breakpoint was already feeding into predictive algorithms mapping potential future hotspots from Baltimore to Chicago. At the press table, Al Jazeera's correspondent asked the question that lingered in every newsroom: does this mark the return of federal dominance over local jurisdictions? Patel paused before answering. When local systems collapse under organized violence, he said the federal government doesn't step over them, it steps in. Still beneath the patriotic sound bites, tension brewed. The Guardian warned that while America celebrated a victory for law and order, civil rights groups feared a new precedent, one where neighborhood policing blurred into domestic militarization. Surveillance powers used in Kensington could, in theory, expand anywhere under the banner of public safety. Meanwhile, prosecutors unveiled a meticulous timeline from the first intercepted message in 2016 to the final coded order sent hours before the raid. Each defendant was charged under the Continuing Criminal Enterprise Act, a statute once reserved for global cartels. Defense lawyers protested the breadth of the charges, claiming the government was turning a city into a battlefield. But on the streets of Philadelphia, no one seemed to care about legal semantics. Residents watched as armored trucks departed and sanitation crews swept up the last shards of glass. To them, the victory felt tangible. For the first time, mothers let their children walk past the corner without fear. By afternoon, Patel's closing words replayed on every major network. "We didn't just arrest people. We permanently removed an organization that traded American lives for profit." Yet the question lingered like gunsmoke in humid air in the pursuit of safety. How much power can a democracy wield before it risks becoming what it fears? When the headlines faded, what remained were the echoes, the human cost written into every boarded window and needle-strewn alley of Kensington. The raids had silenced the gunfire, but silence came with its own weight. The people left behind were not villains or heroes. They were survivors, mothers who had lost sons to overdose, children who mistook police lights for fireworks. The city's wounds, once hidden beneath graffiti, now stood exposed in raw daylight. Outside a shuttered row house, a woman named Carla lit a candle beneath the broken street lamp. Her brother, a dealer turned addict, was among the arrested. He wasn't evil. She told a Guardian reporter he was trapped. For residents like her, the operation was both deliverance and heartbreak. They wanted safety, but not the scorched earth quiet that followed. The BBC interviewed local outreach volunteers who described the aftermath as a ghost town. The dealers were gone, but so were the users who once crowded the corners. Many had vanished into nearby neighborhoods, carrying addiction with them like wildfire. You can kill a network, one social worker said, but not the hunger that built it. The Philadelphia Police Department launched new rehabilitation initiatives under the Urban Renewal Fund, but funding lagged behind federal promises. Trump's administration pledged billions for recovery and redevelopment under the same Urban Integrity Directive that fueled the raid. Yet experts from DW and Reuters noted that money alone wouldn't heal trust. Communities need ownership, said criminologist Laura Jensen. You can't rebuild a neighborhood by occupying it, you rebuild it by empowering it. Still, something in Kensington shifted. By autumn, small grocery stores reopened. Murals replaced graffiti. Kids played soccer in lots once ruled by dealers. The people had begun to reclaim what was stolen, but fear lingered in the corners. From Puerto Rico to Delaware, ripple effects spread. Allied task forces inspired by Operation Breakpoint began their own cleanups. The Justice Department called it a model for nationwide enforcement, but critics, especially from Al Jazeera, asked whether America was entering an era of permanent federal occupation of its own cities. Inside one church basement, a pastor led prayer over the names of those lost to addiction. Justice came with thunder, he said, but mercy must come quietly. The paradox became clear. America had won the battle for control, but could it win the battle for compassion? The cost of reclaiming one street might yet be counted in trust, not dollars. And as Kensington's lights flickered back to life, one question echoed beyond the alleys: can a nation rebuild its soul after fighting its own shadow? From Washington to Wilmington, the message was unmistakable. Kensington was only the beginning. In early 2025, President Donald Trump signed a renewed version of the Urban Integrity Directive, calling it a permanent doctrine for reclaiming America's forgotten cities. What began as a localized strike had evolved into a national model, one blending intelligence operations, AI surveillance, and interagency coordination on a scale not seen since the post-9/11 Homeland Security era. The Department of Justice, DEA, ICE, and FBI now operated under a unified digital network, Project Sentinel-Net, tracking criminal ecosystems as if they were foreign insurgencies. According to Reuters, the system mapped 87 high-risk zones across the country, integrating drone surveillance, facial recognition, and predictive analytics. The success in Philadelphia had given Washington political momentum, and Trump's administration wasted no time in expanding the initiative to Chicago, Baltimore, and Los Angeles. Defense News called it the militarization of domestic peacekeeping, while DW framed it as Europe's long-observed American paradox, freedom preserved through force. Yet even allies in NATO were taking notes. British Home Office officials reportedly sought to replicate the model for counter-gang operations in Manchester and London, marking a strange reversal of America's inner-city tactics, becoming an exportable doctrine of stability. Inside the Pentagon, strategists analyzed the Kensington blueprint as proof that national power was not only projected abroad, it could also be reasserted at home. The merging of defense-grade intelligence with urban policing blurred the lines between soldier and officer, between protection and control. Critics in The Guardian warned of a security architecture without expiration, where every camera, every algorithm became a silent observer of daily life. But within the administration, the mood was triumphant. Trump addressed the nation from the Oval Office declaring, "We are bringing law, order, and dignity back to every American street. The days of criminals ruling communities are over." Applause followed across conservative media, while civil rights advocates prepared new challenges in federal court, arguing that unchecked surveillance could become the next frontier of lost liberty. Still, the numbers spoke loudly. FBI data showed a 38% reduction in violent drug-related crimes in the first 6 months following the directive's implementation. Over 300 federal fugitives were captured using AI-assisted tracking. For many Americans, safety had finally returned, and that was enough. Yet beneath the metrics, a deeper debate took hold. Could the same digital shield protecting America's streets one day shadow its citizens? Would the blueprint that saved Kensington also redefine democracy itself? As the sun rose over the city, once called the nation's open wound, an elderly resident summed it up simply for BBC News: "We got our peace back, but peace always comes with a price." The screen fades to black, a heartbeat of silence. Then a question cuts through the quiet. What kind of freedom are we willing to trade to feel safe again? Operation Breakpoint marked a turning point in America's war against domestic cartels. In a single coordinated night, federal task forces dismantled the Montanez network, ending a decade of drug rule in Philadelphia's Kensington district. Guided by President Trump's Urban Integrity Directive, the operation fused law enforcement and national security tactics, transforming how the U.S. confronts organized crime. The raids not only ended a narcotics empire, they redefined the balance between security and freedom. Federal agencies employed intelligence-level precision, once reserved for counterterrorism, while courts prepared for an unprecedented wave of prosecutions. Communities like Kensington began to heal, but also grappled with the consequences: empty streets, displaced addicts, and lingering distrust. By 2025, the model spread nationwide, turning America's inner cities into testing grounds for a new doctrine of control. As peace returned, so did a haunting question: had the nation saved its streets or surrendered something deeper in the process?